Hi, welcome to my channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. Today I'm going to talk about part 2 of the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline. And this goes about the narrative or the news that a yacht and some Ukrainian nationals were involved in the blow-up of the, 3 Nord Stream pipelines. Now in my previous video, I talked about the article by Seymore Hersh and basically pointed out some errors in his story. So today I'm going to talk about the other side of the story. So if you are interested, please continue watching. Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about part 2, the Andromeda, that's the right name, yacht narrative. As I stated before, in my previous video, part 1, I talked about the Seymore Hersh story, about who done it. But the only thing I can say effectively is that the whole credibility of his article is based on the personal credibility of his personal credibility and his career in the media and as a investigative reporter. So this does lend a lot of credibility to his story, or people would like to believe it, but there are a lot of errors in that story, and therefore I cannot support it. Well, a couple of weeks back, there came out a new narrative, which was published in New York Times, I believe, and in the site. Now, this article basically goes about that there was a yacht that was rented by 6 Ukrainians with false passports, and that they were responsible for the blasting or blow-up of the pipelines. Now, the Pro Russian commentators totally reject this idea, but they don't tell us why. And the same is that Putin and the Kremlin also rejects it, and that the other commentators from Russia also have the same opinion. But nobody really talks about why. And the only thing that they do present is 2 facts. Firstly, Olaf Scholz went to Washington unaccompanied by his usual entourage and had a meeting with Biden for a couple of hours, had no media or press conference, and then returned to Germany. And then a couple of days later, these type of articles appeared in the Western news media. And everybody now on the pro-Russian side said that this is a cover story and it's actually a very poor story, and her story is very detailed and so on, and this cannot be. And that's basically the main reason. Well, the only reason that I can hear about, because nobody else presents any other facts until you start to read about people that are now investigating it. And it seems to me from these investigations, there is some not provable, confirmable information in these articles. But before I even want to start about this Andromeda yacht story, I would like to point out some points that seems to me every pro-Russian commentator has forgot about. And the first thing I would like to talk about is that the sabotage of the Kerch breach, that breach in Crimea. And there was a report by TASS on October the 29th of 2022, which stated, and I actually read this, according to the information available to us, this one was actually just after the drone attack on the Sevastopol fleet, Russian fleet. So it wasn't directly after the Hersh breach, it was after the drone attack. So it was a little bit later. And in this operation to determine who planned the drone attack, that is when the Russians came in contact with this new information. And then I quote now. According to the information available to us, representatives of the UK Navy participated in planning, supporting, and executing the terrorist act in the Baltic Sea on September the 26th in order to disrupt the Nord Stream and the Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines. According to the ministry, British experts also prepared Ukrainian military for the terrorist attack in Sevastopol, that's a drone attack. The preparation of this terrorist act and the training of military personnel of the Ukrainian 73rd Marine Special Operations Center were carried out under the guidance of British specialists located in the city of Oshakov, Nikolaev region. So here, for some other reason, the Russian intelligence or Minister of Defense got hold of, identified who was behind the drone attack on the Sevastopol fleet. They got additional papers that indicated the UK Navy trained these people and was involved in training the Ukrainian people to blow up the Nord Stream 1 and 2. They also provided guidance for British specialists by British, and they told you where they were located. They were located in the city of Oshakov, Nikolaev region. So this is precise information. And the Russians never made this type of information available if it's not true and they have supported documents. Remember the biolab documents? Well, those were all backed by legitimate documents. So these claims by the Minister of Defense has to be taken seriously. But everybody forgets about that. Then we have the second one. Yes, Putin initially, when the pipelines were blown up, initially said who benefits, and he pointed his finger at America. But in the previous videos, when I talked about who done it, I referred to a speech that Putin held on the 21st of December last year. And in this press conference, he was asked a question and he answered and says that, again, who benefits it? And in that stage, he mentioned Ukraine. He didn't mention the US, he mentioned Ukraine, and I actually pointed it out. So why would Putin change his mind? Which is also important to remember. And then the third item, throughout 2022, during the SMO, Zelensky consistently told told Germany not to certify the Nord Stream 2 pipelines. And then problems started with the delivery of gas through Nord Stream 1 due to the Canadian and Siemens turbine, Canadian sanctions. And then he said, well, transport, don't send the turbines back. I would rather have that you use Ukrainian pipelines to transport the gas to Germany, because then we can earn some income and finance the war effort. So clearly at that stage, Zelensky also expressed his wish that the Nord Stream pipelines are not used and that in effect the Ukrainian pipeline network is used. So he has also a motive. So, and then the fourth item was Liz Truss message and so on, but I don't have any credibility in that type of information, so I totally reject that. Then I would like to talk about the amount of explosives. And again, on September 29th, the Financial Times reported that a person called Bjorn Lund, a member of the Swedish seismic network, told state broadcaster SVT he guessed more than 100 kilograms of dynamite or TNT would be needed to cause such a large explosion. basically what he says is, if you looked at this graph and his seismic data and graphs, he estimated that an explosion of about 100 kilograms of TNT would have caused that type of disruption. Now, the narrative is that actually a huge amount of explosive was required to do this. And mostly they talk about the thick steel wall of the pipes and the thick concrete layer and so on. But I will discuss that right now. But in any case, this 500 kilograms worth of explosive that is required, I tried to search for it and I cannot find any sources except reporters that refer to it. There is no specialist for undersea or underwater explosion that can verify this large amount required. Nor do I find a structural engineer that can talk about this. And what was the other thing I wanted to say about this 500 kilograms? Yeah, Judge Napolitano had an interview on a video, YouTube video, with a U.S. explosive export, a certain sergeant and so on, who was looks like more or less retired, and that's maybe 60 years or so. And he tried to press the sergeant for information on what would be required. And it's like the sergeant couldn't answer him. He talked generally about explosives, but didn't know really how explosives behaved underwater. So although Judge would like to get an answer from him, then he was never successful. So even an expert couldn't tell you about this. But there is an answer to this whole matter. Now, like I said, I did the calculations. The pipe was pressured at 200 bar. Now, if you pressurize the pipe at 200 bar, and the wall thickness is then 40 millimeters, 4 centimeters, that is designed by standard codes of the pipeline designs. And if you use the international coding for pipeline designs, then in this case, a 40 millimeter wall thickness and a diameter of 1.2 meters gives you a safety factor of 1.3. That means you have 30% in reserve in terms of stresses. Now, usually you work in safety factors due to irregularities in, call it tolerances. I call it tolerances. A pipe, in theory, is never, is always round, perfectly round, but a pipe in practice is never round perfectly. So there's usually a stress razor to that. Thickness is not always constant. It might go between, vary by, say, 50 thou or something like that, in thickness over a certain length. It's not straight. Material is not uniform through the thickness of the wall. You will have weak spots, certain carbon locations, concentrations, especially where welding is usually done and so on, stress razors, and etc., etc. That's why we have a safety factor to do this type of analysis. But let's ignore all the practical stories. We just look at the theory. You have a safety factor, say, of 30%. The concrete, I've already talked about, has no structural value or contributes no increase in the structural integrity of these pipelines. Because concrete is good in compression, but has very little strength in tension. And pipe on the outside has tension stresses, not compression. And if you look at some of the underwater photographs, you do see some so-called rebars. No, it's not a rebar. It's just a wire mesh in order to ensure integrity of the concrete itself, and it prevents cracking, form of cracking. The concrete, at the end of the day, it's all about corrosion protection. Because if you put some additives into concrete, it becomes waterproof. And at the end of the day, you need water as a conductor and oxygen as an oxidizer in order to rust. And both of them, and oxygen is usually scarce at those depths. So that's basically what the state is of the pipeline. And then one can look at, simple, you go to Wikipedia and you go look for how does a depth charge work. You know, you see it was in the movies. That's the anti-submarine type of depth charges in the Second World War. The guy, or even today, ship anti-submarine drives past or over a certain area where they identified or think their submarine is, and then they let the cylinder roll down a ramp and then fall into the water at certain distances, and then when they reach a certain depth, then they start to explode. And the thing is that when they explode, they will crush the shell of the submarine, and then the submarine will be destroyed, and well, the foe is destroyed. The enemy is destroyed, or it will be damaged and the crew has to surface and then they will be captured. But at the end of the day, no more submarine. Well, the way that the depth charge work is a little bit different than I thought. It's in this explosion, say a depth charge explodes at 100 meters deep and so on, just as a reference. It creates, with the first explosion, a shock wave. And this shock wave, usually when it's near to the submarine, kills the crew. Then the second shock waves oscillates inside this air bubble that was created by the explosives, transfers it to the medium, and what then happens is that if the explosion happens between 3 and 4 meters, this, okay, I'm going to do it like, it's actually like this, but it's the submarine starts to wiggle like a fish, you know, it's like bending this way and this way and this way. It's like up and down, you know, and that causes bending stresses inside the submarine, and you can call maybe fatigue. I don't know how many cycles goes through, and then the submarine breaks in two. And then as it goes, the bubble rises, and it still starts to oscillate until it reaches the surface, where it then vents to the atmosphere. Now, this explosion naturally is the most effective when it's still under the water and hasn't vented to the atmosphere. So the deeper it is actually explodes, the better it is. So then the whole energy is later on lost inside the water. Now, according to the Wikipedia, if you can use 100 kilograms of TNT, that's a depth charge, and if you explode it in not more than, say, between 3 and 4 meters away from the submarine, it can break a submarine of 1,000 tons. Now, 1,000 tons submarine currently is typical a modern submarine. And an example would be the Russian Amur class submarine. And this submarine is about 58 meters long and 6.4 meters high. So this is a fairly big submarine. And if you explode a depth charge very near to it, then it will break that submarine in half. Now, the same principle applies to the pipeline. Now, there are some videos available from Blue Eye Robotics that was done by some guy from a small boat, and you know, and if you look at the video on top of the about water, there's no ship in or land in sight. It's in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't look like there's too much traffic as people try to convey to us. That's like full of vessels. And when he sent down his robotic, and when he found the pipeline, you can see the pictures are fairly stable, so which indicates there are very little currents in that region. And the sea was fairly flat, except for some trenches, if you want to call it. But you can think about those trenches that was created by the gas flow that actually left the pipeline. And it's like when you see a dam and you see the water flowing into a dam, and it usually erodes away all the sand and the weakness where the water actually hits the floor, and then it flows away. In any case, so the conditions were very well in that. The photos were nicely done. You can see also the surface of the failure. None of the surfaces show you any cutting type of failure. The surface is very smooth, so that indicates basically a nice hoop shear failure with a final breakout at a certain point where it became catastrophic. And you can also find, and then there were some videos that was provided by Greenpeace that also sent down a robot. Well, they did other tests as well, but they wanted to plant the flag of the Greenpeace, which is also available. Same thing, fairly stable water conditions, fairly clean, good visibility. And you can see some of the pipes were actually showing in the air. Now, if you think about this whole story, that's a pipeline, and you explode the 100 kilograms of TNT right next to it. The whole pipe will make this. And what it will create is at a certain distance, there will be sufficient bending moments that increases the stress in the pipe walls, which will then increase the stress level, which will exceed the 30% safety factor of margin that you have. Failure will happen. The pipe will go there, and it will be, the pipes will open up. The gas will flow like a huge stream of, call it propulsion, and the pipe will shoot away. And that's why you will find, that is why I believe there is a huge part of the pipe missing. It lays down further down, a distance from the original pipeline away. Secondly, also, you know, if you have a garden hose, you open up the tap and you don't hold the point, and it goes like a snake. Well, that's the same thing what probably happened with the pipes. The propulsion of the escaping gas started to move the pipe up and down and bend it in certain directions until the volume flow and the effect of the, call it propulsion, because it's basically at the end of the day a nozzle of like a, it stopped, and it stopped in that position. That will also cause failure of the pipes itself, that pieces will break off. So everything basically logical, you can understand how it happened. And for me, the data says 100 kilograms of TNT working the same matter as a depth charge bomb, placed right next to the pipeline, will absolutely destroy it. And then if you think about this, only 3 were destroyed, so you in effect need 300 kilograms of TNT. So it's not that much. But this type of information is much more basically what is provided by anybody else. And it's a simple Google, Wikipedia, go read it. Okay, so now we come basically to the Nord Stream Andromeda story. So on the 7th of March this year, the New York Times published an article in which anonymous US officials, just like in the Hersh story, suggested that the operation to sabotage the Nord Stream pipeline may have been conducted by a pro-Ukrainian group. Well, no, not a pro-Ukrainian group, by the Ukrainians. I'm sorry. And the US official declined to disclose the nature of the intelligence and how it was obtained, or any details of the strength of the evidence it contains. Okay. But shortly thereafter, the site, that's German, Time, published an article with a lot more information. And in this article, it lays out that a group of 6 unidentified people from a pro-Russian group, possible pro-Russian group, used high-quality fake passports and chartered the yacht from Rostock on September the 6th before heading to place explosives at the Nord Stream sabotage site. Now, Rostock, if I remember right, is in Germany. And the yacht reportedly made a stop in sorry, I can't pronounce this, and on Kristiansand as part of the trip. The yacht was later searched by the German authorities and traces of explosives were found. The article also stated that the charter was paid by a Polish company owned by 2 Ukrainians. Okay. So they were caught out. They were also caught out on the Hersh sabotage, the sabotage of the Hersh bridge. So it's not that you cannot trace them. And over the last 2 days, parts of the story was corroborated, the English words, while other parts have raised further questions. So we can look at some of the stuff that was corroborated. The Danish newspaper, Extra Bladet, probably extra page, confirmed that police have conducted an investigation on the island of Kristiansand and was looking for a specific vessel that was docked on the island between the 16th and 18th September. So this firstly now is not a story anymore. This is now sort of confirmed. A Danish newspaper confirmed that the police have investigated. So somebody was at the harbor on the island of Kristiansand and talked to people. It's not like an anonymous source or like Seymore Hersh. There's no real evidence that anybody, a third party, can be used to verify what happened. And then the Spiegelpolitik released an article that gave a detailed description of the yacht involved in the investigation. So they got it somewhere from the investigative team. And in this article, it stated that the yacht was 50 meters long, had 5 cabins, and accommodated 11 people and cost just under 3,000 euros a week to rent. They also stated that the yacht was rented out by a company from Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, Germany. What the hell is these names? Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Okay. Anyways, so this information made it possible to narrow the search down to 2 vessels out in the Hohe Düne Marina in Rostock. That's the marina that was located in Rostock. And it was rented out by a Mola Yachting GmbH. That's German for company. And these, both of these vessels were Bavaria Cruises 50 yacht. You can actually have a nice picture out of it. And these yachts are 15.5 meters long and can accommodate 11 people and 5 cabins and cost you 3,000 euros a week in a rent, and you can actually go and see it on their website. But unfortunately, due to the Mola Yachting website, these 2 yachts don't have are not equipped with AIS, automatic identification systems, which means that the movement cannot be tracked using ship tracking sites like Marine Traffic. This is very convenient, isn't it? So now, nobody could have checked these yachts, how they traveled in that period, and that week. So you cannot really find out where they more or less went, which is in favor of the group that blew up the pipelines. But it's not in favor of the investigation and the police. It's not like you can track like the other vessels or the aircrafts. And that is what the guys probably would have wanted. And then this could have been further narrowed down to a specific vessel, which was called the Andromeda, of several sources with knowledge of the investigation, again confirmed by people that are involved in the investigation. So this is not a question that didn't happen all in 2 or 3 days while Olaf Scholz was in Washington and talked to Biden. This has happened over the last couple of months where the investigation came through. And it has now been publicly confirmed by the Spiegel that the Andromeda has been seen has been identified. And then it also stated that the group has been professionally trained and used very high quality fake passports during the operation to protect their identity. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. The question is, are they proper passports or are they clearly faked? That means are they 100% like official passports or are they 98% by a forger? Now, I believe these are genuine Ukrainian passports, but with wrong names and wrong codes and wrong photographs, etc., that these people cannot be identified. Well, the photos had to be, because they had to borrow or they had to show it to the necessary authorities. But their names and addresses and call it security, social security number, or whatever you want, identification number, that would have been wrong. In any case, at the same time, through the boat charter was reportedly paid by a Polish company owned by 2 Ukrainians, which now is supposed to leave a direct link back to the Ukraine. Well, it's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. The guys slipped up. The guys were sort of, the method was identified. The identification hasn't been done yet. Maybe they take the photographs and do some searches, social media searches, and then finally identify the culprits. But let's see what will turn out in any case. But, like I said, the whole operation of the sabotage of the Kursk breach was also identified by the FSB, the Russian Secret Service, and people were arrested. So this is not uncommon. And then the Times wrote another piece where they state that the explosives were driven from Poland into Germany, which is a little bit suspicious, because why would the group acquire explosives from Poland and then risk transporting it over the border to Germany and sail out of Rostock? Well, probably they had their reasons, but I will just now tell you about the whole operation, about the Kursk breach operation. So let's go a little bit further. It would have been safe and logical, easier to set sail from a Polish marina, which is also closer to the Bornholm and the site of the Nord Stream sabotage. Yes, but they probably had their reasons. Maybe they had contact in Rostock. Maybe they had help there and nothing in Poland itself without involving other people. Maybe the marina was better situated. There must be a reason, which we don't know at this stage. Well, again, here we come back to the general narrative that 2,000 kilograms of explosives was required, 400 kilograms per pipeline. But again, no reporter really mentions that, and why? Because therefore no expert has really confirmed this or specified it. And I actually went now to the depth charts option, and that showed 100 kilograms is more than enough to blow up that pipeline, because 100 kilograms destroys a modern submarine. It's capable of destroying a modern submarine. Even if you don't want to use the calculations, just think about it. It can destroy a modern submarine. So why cannot destroy a simple pipeline? But that is the hard point. The point that people get stuck. The amount of explosive on a little boat like this. But if there were 6 people, just think about 6 people, but the ship has place for 11 people, and then surely there's space for another 5, and the diving gear and explosives can easily be accommodated in the space of the 5 occupants that are not there. So space is not really a problem. And then it's also a statement, but these vessels are not ideal for scuba diving and so on, but yes, they are. They do have a ramp at the back, depending on the model. You remember, it's like always at they flip back the back of the yacht, and then they are near to the water, and then they can dive and climb out easily and so on. So that's not a problem. So it's the yacht, in my opinion, is totally a valid story. Not a valid story, suitable for the application or the intended purpose. It was a clandestine type of operation. Now, yeah, so the Ukrainians were sort of now involved in blowing up the pipeline of Germany. And if that would come out, then, well, Ukraine is in a state of war. He would argue, but this is Russian property and it's a war and I can destroy it. And then Germany had to say, but hey, what, you can't, that belongs to us as well. They said, no, it belongs to Russia. So that's not a clear defined type of act of war between Ukraine and Germany. There's always debatable points. Now with the Hersh story, Americans blew up the German pipeline. And that is terrorism and sabotage of a partner. Now that is a totally different story. So even there you need complete deniability. Here in this case, you don't need deniability per se. And also at the end of the day, the Ukrainians could have said, listen, yeah, we always have still a pipeline. You can transport and feed your gas through our pipeline. And we only destroyed 3 of them. There is another one left. So, and it has a turbine. So if you want, you can still get the gas from Russia. It's not that I destroyed everything for you and cut your throat. No. I left a little bit of space for you. So I was thinking of you when I destroyed the Russian pipeline. Do you understand the arguments that can be done? The other thing is about the Ukrainian involvement in this whole matter is that the narrative goes that only America has the capability of doing it, and that is nonsense. A lot of countries can do it. Private contractors can do it. It's like when I talked last time about equipment to set off from the buoy to set off the explosions. Hersh made it like new technology. No, it is true and tested technology used by the oil rigs and the gas rigs in the open sea. So it's all known. It's all tested. And you mean divers at these platforms are excellent, highly experienced type of people, and I'm sorry, no. So the Ukrainians could have done it. They are technically capable of doing it. But that's a narrative. No, they are not doing it. And it also, the story also goes, it's like a private rogue group. No, it cannot be like that. The Kiev government probably sanctioned the whole operations and supported it. And then remember what I said when I started this video, the British Navy, the statement by the Russian Defense Ministry that the British Navy was involved. The British Navy was involved with a drone attack on the Russian Blackfeet and the sabotage of the Kerch Bridge. So who says they were not involved in this one as well? They could have provided the technical assistance to the Ukrainians. The FSB investigated the whole thing and they identified with the Kerch Bridge 5 Russian citizens as well as 3 citizens of Ukraine and Armenia. So they identified a lot of people that were involved in the Kerch Bridge. And according to the Russian intelligence services, the explosive device on the Kerch Bridge that was used to blow up the bridge was concealed in the rolls of construction film and was shipped from Ukraine's Black Sea port of Odessa. Just think about this. From Odessa to Bulgaria in early August, before being moved through Georgia and Armenia and into Russia. So what they had to do is they had to ship it from Odessa, which was guarded by the Russians, to Bulgaria, from there on, probably to Georgia or Armenia, and then Georgia, and then Russia. And then it was sort of detonated by being carried in a truck towards Crimea And the FSB also said that all the while the Ukrainian agents were in full control of the operation. So he went through 4 countries, the delivery of the explosives, had to get a person that didn't know he was carrying explosives, had to transport it over the bridge and then explode it. That is a complicated operation. So no, you can't tell me that these same people cannot organize and plan and execute an operation to blow up 3 pipelines underwater in another country. No, it doesn't work like that. And therefore, I believe that the Andromeda story has some credibility. It has some options, or it has some potential, more potential than the Hersh story. Because this investigation was done by proper police, and that is verified, and it has been done over several weeks, and not in the period of Olaf Scholz meeting with Biden and the news articles. Yes, there are some other points that sort of you can ask your questions about the fake passports. Yeah, I think it's government-issued passwords with fake names and addresses and stuff like that, because it was supported by Ukraine. The cleaning of the explosive residue, I can also think about. It's not easy to clean explosives. Once it touches a certain surfaces, it will linger on that surfaces and it will be identified. I've once read that if you have blood on a surface, you can clean it as best as possible. But visually, the blood is gone. But if you spray something on it and you watch it under a UV light, then the blood stains are shown. It's the same as a long time I read about the smuggling of explosives or what was it, drugs, I can't remember. But the residue sits on your hand, so even if you pack it, then you can seal it, but you still contaminate the outside surface. Then you have to reseal it and reseal it and reseal it, and the dogs will always be able to sniff it out. So in my opinion, the fact that they found explosive residue is actually a plus for the investigators and a negative for the saboteurs. But it's understandable. They probably only cleaned the unit superficially and brought it back like a typical people that hire a certain vehicle and then bring it back and expect the owner, and the owner will see this mess and he will start to clean it and no questions asked. It's all type of natural type of actions. Nobody would expect that they're going to identify the vessel and go and do now a highly technical explosive test on the matter. And then the other thing that also bothers me is that we constantly hear about private contractors. Private contractors that are training Ukrainian personnel, military, secret service, whatever. There's a lot of people that have a lot of skills, being highly trained in the American or British Army and then left the service and now are private contractors and are capable of organizing these things. So again, it's not unbelievable. These all things can happen. There's nothing, if you look at these articles that was in the newspaper, none of them were like fictional. None were like written like a Tom Clancy novel, spy thriller novel. But if you read a Hersh one, that is how it was written. So, I'm not going to reject this story. I say there's potential. Whether it's true or not, there are some other vessels that can be identified that were in that region. There are some other guys that are actually on the internet investigating the matter. And hopefully we will have some update in the future, and hopefully I can bring you that. But I'm sorry, I'm not going to reject the story. there are too many questions about Seymore Hersh, and there is so much potential in the yacht story. But at the end of the day, you have to make up your own mind. So this is story more for today. So until next time, cheers.